thanks a lot for coming, everyone. If you are new to the Nuclear Waste Services Research Support Office Early Career Researcher Network, one of the longest titled things ever, hence the 3 acronyms, we welcome you very much to this. I'm going to give you a little brief overview, both of what the RSO ECR network has been established to do and what we aim to do, and then also just a quick run through the agenda for today before we crack on. First of all, these 2 QR codes here, if you haven't already, you can use both of these to find out more about the network. We've got a website page now, which we're hopefully going to be fleshing out a little bit more soon. And then also, if you're not already signed up to the RSO newsletter, please do sign up to that, because it's really useful to hear about all of both these events and a lot of other events, opportunities like jobs, fellowships, that type of thing. Just a brief one. Who are we? So the Early Career Research Network is relatively new. I think we've probably been around maybe about a year now. I can't quite remember how long ago it was that we established. And we're part of the Research Support Office at Nuclear Waste Services. We're made up of Tom Neil, who's at Manchester, Rachel Crawford, who's a postdoc at Sheffield Hallam, and then myself, Luke, and Kat Rains at Nuclear Waste Services. And the aim of this, when we first started pulling it together, and the idea of what we wanted to do was to support kind of mid-late stage PhD students / postdocs and early career researchers to hopefully do what we can to bridge that gap in kind of the area of radioactive waste disposal. We can acknowledge that as you get to the end of your PhD, there can be a bit of a cliff edge, and it can be quite tough to take that next step, particularly in academia, but also just in nuclear in general. So we've got, as I said there's a QR code for a web page. We've also got a LinkedIn group, which we'd strongly encourage you to join. At the moment, it's mostly just myself and Kat posting on there about the events that we're doing, but it is kind of quite an open forum. So if anybody ever feels they want to post in there about an opportunity they've seen or something they would like to discuss, that is absolutely fine. You're welcome to. It's quite informal. It's mostly to do kind of peer-to-peer support in there. And looking forward, hopefully the ECR will have a little bit of its own funding, and we're hoping to develop some potential kind of small development pots and opportunities to help promote independent researchers moving forward. We always are looking for potential committee members as well. As I said, we're only about a year old, so it's a little bit ad hoc at the moment, but we're starting to formalise the process of being a committee a bit more, and we're looking at having specific roles. So if you are interested, please do get in touch with one of the 4 of us, or you can get in touch via that email address just there, rso-gdf@manchester.ac.uk. Just a bit of background. We have already had, I think, 2 in-person meetings now. Yes, 2, and 1 or 2 webinars. This might be the second, it might be the third. I've lost count. So we are trying to do these things quite regularly. We tend to tack one onto the RSO conference, which happens every January. And we're also looking at maybe having one in roughly summertime as well. And then we're also developing a bit of a potential kind of regular webinar sessions that will be hosted throughout the kind of year, so that we can kind of keep in touch with each other. But the primary thing is to say that we are a network that we want to be run by its members. So we want to do things that are beneficial for you as a community. So if you ever have any thoughts, even if you don't want to be involved in organising anything, if you ever have any thoughts about what you would like to see as part of the ECR network, any opportunities, any sessions, webinars, blah, 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 get in touch and let us know. This session in particular was driven by suggestions from people at the in-person meeting in January. People said that they wanted help with kind of careers and applying for things, so that's what we've gone for with this. So I'll stop whispering in a second, but this is roughly the agenda. So we're going to crack on. Actually, I'm pretty much on time. I'm doing quite well. So first of all, we're going to have Purdy from Nuclear Waste Services, who's going to give us a bit of a insight into how nuclear waste services and maybe kind of industry more broadly, the nuclear industry more broadly, looks at kind of people from your type of background, PhD, postdoc, when applying for jobs, what they look for, how best to potentially sell yourself in those scenarios. We'll have a 10-minute comfort break so you can get a brew, and then we'll come back and we'll have Kath Rothwell from the University of Stirling, who is has just got her first permanent lectureship at Stirling and has got quite a bit of experience in applying for kind of fellowships and stuff like that and grants. So we can get a bit of perspective from that angle, in the academic angle, if people are interested in understanding how best to go about applying for those types of things. We'll have a bit of Q&A after each of the speakers, but then there'll be plenty of time at the end as well for just bringing up more questions and having a more of an informal chat. I would really push the fact that this is quite informal. We're very friendly in this group, so please do feel free to ask any questions. There's no stupid questions. So without further ado, I will pass over to Purdy. Do you want to try and share your screen, Purdy?
I am just about to, let me try and get onto presentation mode. This is where we see if it works.
Perfect. Looking good.
You can all see that?
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Excellent.
So I'll let you crack on.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to go through a bit of a presentation today. Yes, it's going to be talking about nuclear waste services, but I also wanted to do something a bit more general in terms of moving from academia into industry. Okay, so hoping to give you some tips, etc., some resources, and some stuff to think about in terms of if that is the move that you want to make. So my agenda, got a bit of an introduction to myself. We've got a bit of understanding about the transition, looking at careers and skills, recruitment processes, preparing for interviews, having a think about what you actually want from your future career. And then, like I say, I'm going to share some resources and hopefully take some questions and answers at the end. However, feel free to stick your hand up if you've got any questions as we go along. Like I say, it's pretty informal, to be honest. So who am I? So I'm Purdy Spooner. I am part of Nuclear Waste Services. I've been with the organisation for almost 5 years, I think it is now. I started as a contractor and went permanent with the organisation probably about 3 years ago. But my academic career was very different. So, A levels, then went off to university, thought I wanted to be a scientist or something along those lines. Did my degree in microbiology. But if I'm honest, probably around about second year, I realised it really wasn't the environment for me. To be honest, my skill set just didn't suit it. In the same time, I had part-time jobs in retail, etc., to fund my education. Fast forward, obviously, I am now the Senior Talent Acquisition Manager for Nuclear Waste Services. So that is effectively, I'm responsible for all the recruitment in the organisation, for setting the strategy, for managing the team, for doing project management on different improvement projects, etc. But obviously, I didn't go from one to the other very easily. It was it was a journey. So I ended up after university selling mobile phones for Vodafone. Then I realised that actually sales was probably where my skill set sat. So I ended up actually getting a job as a recruitment consultant in an agency, sort of learnt my craft there, but decided that actually that's not where my future career lay. I really wanted to be the client side, but it wasn't as easy as just moving over. So I had to really set out and figure out what my career path was going to be. So I did a sideward step into like an outsourced organisation who recruited for certain companies. I then moved internally to do recruitment. I looked at the skill sets that I would need for the future to be a recruitment manager and really focused on building my career path through there. My background is not in public sector or public sector bodies. It was very much big corporates, telecoms, US-owned companies. And again, I found it very challenging to move from the corporate world into public sector. So I personally took the decision to go contracting for a while to build up my experience in a variety of different organisations. And then that's how eventually I ended up at Nuclear Waste Services. So what I would say is that, you know, the path that you decide is not always going to be smooth. Sometimes you do need to make difficult decisions in terms of sideward steps, sometimes even backward steps, if I'm honest. But if you have a sight of where you want to be, hopefully you can plan that all out. So let me introduce you to Nuclear Waste Services. So most of you know us, hopefully. You know what we do, etc. But what I wanted to do here was really just focus on a couple of things that are really important to us as an organisation. So our vision, which is making nuclear waste permanently safer sooner. Our mission, which is to be the one-stop shop for nuclear waste management and disposal in the UK. But also really important to myself and probably anybody who has joined NWS or works here at NWS is our values. And this really, we try and live and breathe our values. And that's what makes our culture. So we're action orientated, we're ambitious, we act with integrity, and we are collaborative and inclusive. And you really can see that through our culture. Now, I don't know if you've seen this slide before, but this is basically our roadmap of how we are going to deliver our vision. And obviously, a lot of the research that is currently happening is to support this roadmap. And it may not be supporting it right now, but obviously come 2030, you could definitely see some of those outcomes. So I think the one thing to really think about is understanding the transition from academia to industry, because it can be quite challenging and there are quite a lot of differences. So what I've done is I've kind of pulled out some key differences to think about and to consider whether actually this would suit you personally and suit what you want to do with your career in the future. So work environment, typically in academia, you're obviously very much working with universities, research institutes. The environment is probably a little bit more relaxed, should I say, in terms of flexibility of hours, approach to work, etc. Obviously, within industry, quite often you have very set hours. It is very structured. There is a lot of focus on deliverables. So although there will be lots of organisations out there that offer flexible hours, flexible working patterns, and indeed NWS is one of them, the one thing I always say to my team is I don't really mind how many hours you put in as long as you are delivering on the expectations and the workload, etc. And you will find that exactly that. So the focus is always on deliverables, quite often more short-term goals via PDRs, via project delivery, etc., etc. Like I say, expectations and goals, there is a difference. So in academia, probably more emphasis on generation of new knowledge, research, contribution to the community, whereas within industry, it is obviously more focused on practical applications of knowledge, product development, business objectives, etc. Collaboration and team working, to be honest, in industry, you will find that actually collaboration is still really, really critical. It does tend to be more within the discipline you're in. However, and we'll come on probably to kind of stakeholder engagement, etc. Stakeholder engagement, communication is an absolute key skill when you're working in industry. I think we touched on this about pace and pressure. So, and again, I'm making assumptions here, so I do apologise. But within academia, it tends to be a little bit slower. You have more time allocated to reasoning, exploration of ideas, thinking, reading, etc. To be honest, within industry, it's a lot faster pace. You are focused on the results, the efficiency, the pressure. And I say the pressure, it varies obviously, but you do end up having pressure relating to meeting deadlines, achieving business targets, etc. I would say with NWS though, that is not an unworkable pressure. It's a very, very positive environment in terms of being able to manage expectations, etc. Career progression. So career progression in academia is obviously quite often linear, whereas within industry, to be honest, if you are up for it, the world is your oyster. Sometimes, like I say, you do have to work for those transitions into different disciplines or different opportunities. But especially when you join either a larger organization or an organization like NWS, where we are part of a group, the NDA group, there will be various opportunities for you to move within that organizational group and to develop your skills and your career path. And then skills. Obviously, within academia, a lot of emphasis is put on the theoretical knowledge, the research skills, the academic writing. Within industry, it very much is about engaging your practical skills, looking at problem solving, and like I say, communication is one of the big things. So some of the common challenges that you might find in terms of moving between academia and industry, there will be a cultural shift. It's as simple as that. People can be demanding, it's as simple as that. But then also we work in a very, very, I hate to say it, nice environment. So people will demand things in a very nice way. But again, everybody's working to deadlines. Everybody's working to common objectives. And so that communication piece, that stakeholder management piece is really important. Skill set differences, as we've discussed. Pace of work, discussed. Networking. So obviously your networks are going to differ. So where in academia you have probably got more of an internal network, and it is very much centralized in terms of academic staff, etc. In industry, it could be anybody and everybody. So we always say sort of anybody is a customer. So whether you're even talking to suppliers, internal contacts, external customers, etc., they are all part of your network and all need to be treated as such and could potentially offer opportunities in the future. So the job application process, or sorry, should I say application process, can be very different when you're looking for a job in industry. It may require learning how to write industry-specific resumes, preparing for different types of interviews, and understanding what the employers are you looking for. And then expectation management. So industry roles may have very different expectations and metrics for success compared to being in academia. And it's really crucial that you understand and align these expectations for your career progression and what you want. And in a few slides, we will consider actually what are the things you need to think about when you're looking for your next career. So transferable skills, that's one thing that we always get asked about, so what transferable skills are useful, and not just useful, but should we be focusing on in terms of your experience if you want to get a role in industry or at NWS? So time management, it's an obvious one. You're probably all managing your own time, but it's making sure that you pull that out into CVs, job interviews, etc. Communication skills. And by the way, you don't have to be the best communicator. You don't have to be a real extrovert to have those communication skills. It's just knowing how to effectively communicate your ideas, which I would imagine you're all kind of practicing anyway within your current research, and also making sure that you're getting the targeting right for the audience that you are addressing. Project management skills, probably don't realize it, but you're probably doing all of that within your current research and academic studies, etc. And they will obviously transfer to industry, no matter what the role. Problem solving, obviously. Adaptability, the fact that if some of your research doesn't go right the first time, you adapt and you go again. And again, that is a real transferable skill that you would be able to demonstrate within industry that you are able to do. Collaboration and teamwork, technical skills, and resilience and perseverance. Again, that resilience and perseverance, I think it changes for everybody. Resilience looks different, perseverance looks different for everybody. And for me, when we say resilience and perseverance, I always think that it almost has a slight negative twang to it. I like to think of that as basically being able to manage your own stress or your own behaviors, etc. So knowing what your boundaries are in terms of, is this too much work, or actually, how can I manage this slightly different? So working in the nuclear industry it's really rewarding. Okay. When I start talking about what nuclear waste services is actually looking to deliver and how it's going to impact our future generations, get quite excited about it. And it can be really easy to lose that focus when you're in the day-to-day weeds of your job. But it is highly rewarding, especially when you start thinking about what our mission is. We have lots and lots of different roles within the organization. Job titles can sometimes not be as clear as you would like them to be, and I think that's a nuclear challenge across the board of any organization. To be honest, it could be a challenge across the whole of public sector, but effectively the types of roles that we can recruit for are here. If you think about it, we NWS or the NDA group would probably be recruiting for it at some point over the next few years. So I wanted just to talk to you about the recruitment process for industry. Now, obviously, every recruitment process is generally quite different, but it's always going to have the key basics to it. It's going to have your discovery and qualification, which tends to be a conversation between yourselves and a recruiter, a HR person, an agency, just talking about what the role is, what your skills are, what your experience is, and what you're looking for in the next position. And it's a really good opportunity for you to understand, or for them to understand your motivations and how you can match them, but also for you to find out more about the organisation and whether it's right for you as well. The one thing I would say, and we'll come on to interviews in a bit, but I always say to my hiring managers that an interview isn't a one-way thing. It's not for us to decide whether you are the right person for us. It's a two-way thing. We've got to decide if you're the right person for us, but you've also got to decide if we're the right organisation for you, because there is nothing worse, and I've been there before, taking a role and then quickly realising it's not the organisation that you want to work for. So, we'll come on to things to consider, but take every opportunity to get the information you need to ultimately make a decision on whether it's the right role, right organisation for you, right values, etc. You'll then go through a shortlisting process where if you feel you've got the right skill set, you'll be presented to the hiring manager. Interviews, then if you're shortlisted for an interview, you'll be obviously invited in there. From a applicant point of view, I would always be expecting some pre-reading or some interview support from the organisation. And again, we'll come on to that in a moment, but that for me would be a clear expectation that you guys should be considering. Then you'll come to the offer and contract, and then onboarding. And onboarding does obviously vary for each organisation. Obviously, if you do come into the nuclear sector, just be aware that there will be a vetting process, etc. So creating your CV. Okay, so I personally think with AI and with anything on the internet, etc., anybody can write a good CV now. I think my little pieces of advice are, I personally would stay away from photos. It's quite something that is is expected within the European community, but not necessarily in the UK. Don't make it overcomplicated. Get as much detail about experience as possible. So even if it is part-time roles that you're doing to support your study, for example, even if it is, I don't know, waitressing, for example, you've got customer service skills there. You have got the ability to work under pressure, etc. So really think about those transferable skills and demonstrate them on your CV. So not just I am adaptable, give an example of how you're adaptable, but don't make it war and peace. And also feel free to include personal achievements as well, or personal hobbies. So obviously, if you have a lot of sporting activities, great teamwork experience. So think about those pieces within your CV. I have put something in there about cover letters, but there's not a lot of organisations that do require cover letters now, because you'll probably find if you're ever applying for roles, it will be done through websites, sort of recruitment portals, etc. And you quite often don't have to put a covering letter. But if you are ever requested for a covering letter, make sure you personalise it. So why do you want to work for that particular organisation? One thing I do want to highlight here is just ED&I. Okay, so every organisation should have an ED&I declaration or comment, etc., to let you know what they do to support inclusion, diversity, and equality within the organisation. What I would say is that NWS, we are a disability confident employer, which is basically an accreditation. Means we have certain guaranteed interview schemes. It also just reassures people that we will make reasonable adjustments. And what I would say is, no matter who you are applying for, if you get to interview stage, if you get offered the role, please never be afraid to ask or request for reasonable adjustments to put you through the process. So whether that is, I don't know, having early morning interviews because you don't, I don't know, you suffer from long COVID, for example, and by the evening you are exhausted. Whether one of the examples we quite often get at the moment is having the questions or some of the questions pre-prepared, so because of brain fog through menopause, etc. If you feel like you do need an adjustment to perform your best in the interview or application process, you should feel comfortable to ask that, and any organisation that is people focused will work with that request as well. So preparing for your interview, the things that I would be preparing for is making sure that you know what type of interview it's going to be. Is it going to be assessment based? Is it going to be competency based, behavioural? Is it going to be an assessment centre? And again, an organisation should be giving you all of those details up front. If they are not, then please make sure you ask for them. It's good to know who's going to be interviewing you. Obviously, always be prepared that things might change when you actually get to the interview piece. Sometimes you can't help it if interviews go off sick, etc. But it's always good to know if you're one-on-one with the interviewer, or if it's going to be yourself and a panel of 5 people as well. It's nice to not know not to have that shock when you actually get there. In terms of answering questions, we always recommend the STAR method. So situation, task, action, result, in terms of structuring your answers. So for example, in my PhD research, I faced a tight deadline. I organised a detailed project plan, collaborated with my team, and successfully completed the project on time. Now that included all of the STAR acronyms. So that's the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And in terms of answering questions in that method, again, you can get lots of help on the internet to be able to do that. So as I've said previously, in terms of preparing for interviews or preparing for an application, etc., you really need to be the one who decides, actually, is this organisation for you? So the things that you could think about are what are the professional development opportunities? Where can I go from here? Is it a stepping stone to another organisation, or actually can I develop my career within this organisation? Do they offer mentoring services? Have they got networking opportunities? Career paths, which again links in with the professional development. Obviously, remuneration is always going to be important, but I think increasingly, as remuneration kind of plateaus, benefits are going to be more important. And when I say benefits, that's the softer and more contractual benefits, so your pensions, etc. But then your softer ones are the things like work-life balance. Do they offer flexible working? Can you work remotely, etc.? And actually, do you want to work remotely? So I've put location there because actually some organizations work 100% remotely, and that doesn't work for everybody. Within NWS, we do hybrid working, dependent on the role, dependent on the location, but generally it's very much a mix of home working and office working, which gives you sort of the best of both worlds. And as I said before, culture, values, team. Are you going to be proud to work for this organisation? Are you going to enjoy working with those people? And what I've done is I've just kind of to show you what I mean by those in terms of what NWS can actually offer. So annual leave. If annual leave is really important to you, you need to look at the number of days. Have they got buy or sell? Are you able to accrue days, etc., etc. Family friendly benefits. If you're a carer, are they able to support leave in those areas? Rewards, so bonus, overtime, etc. Well-being. What do they do for their people well-being? So, for example, we offer a cycle to work scheme. We provide eye tests. You have access to employee assistance program, which basically will help to give you advice on financial matters, personal matters, etc., etc. And then we've got pension, pay scales, lots of learning and development opportunities. But something else that we are also particularly proud of is our employee networks. So these are networks that are run by our employees to support different people and allies, etc. And help also in terms of creating diversity and inclusivity within NWS. And there's just some of our employee networks there as well. So I have put some resources there. And I will share these slides with you afterwards, so you can have access to there, but they will give you guidance on, again, how to put your CV together, how to do applications, interviews, etc., etc. And last but not least, some links to where you'd find careers with nuclear waste services, the NDA. I have also put Destination Nuclear in there as well. Destination Nuclear is a cross organizational job website, should we say, encouraging people who are not currently in the nuclear sector to take careers in the nuclear sector. So, any questions?
Thanks so much, Paddy. That was really, really useful. I mean, I found it useful. I wish I'd had that when I was finishing my PhD about 5 years ago or whatever it was. So yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. So yeah, we can open up the floor. Likewise, we've hit the break mark here. So if people do want to nip off, they can do, but we can open the floor to any questions. If people don't want to put their hand up, that's fine. Stick them in the chat. Go on, Kat. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm just curious, as this is a good forum to ask the question. When you're, I guess, interviewing or looking at candidates for really technical roles in NWS, what are kind of the 3 things you wish people would stop doing?
Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think generally, some of the frustrations that we find when we're, for example, speaking to candidates initially or interviewing, etc., is people not answering the question. So, and this could apply to any role, if I'm honest with you. I think with highly technical roles, people are very passionate about it and can quite often go on a bit of a curve. So I think it's really understanding what is the initial question that people have asked, or the interviewer has asked, or the recruiter has asked, and have I answered it? Yes.
That's very good.
That's not free, is it? But I would say that's
no.
I think that one. Also, research the organization. Like you don't have to know them inside and out, but you'd be surprised how many times, and this is even just with really experienced applicants and candidates, the amount of people who've not even taken 10 minutes to research the organization. So make sure you research the organization. And then finally, I would say have questions for the interviewer. So again, any good interview should finish opening the questions up to the applicant. And there are always some really good questions to ask that I always think, oh, that's a good one. Things like, why do you enjoy working here? And that gives you a really good insight to actually the organisation from an employee's point of view. Or and I think this is putting people on the spot, so I don't know if I should say it, but asking feedback there and then say, have I answered all your questions? How have I done? Is there anything you want me to recover, etc. And quite often you'll get the answer, no, it's fine. But I think that shows self-reflection as well.
That's great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Really insightful. Thank you. Charlie had a hand up. Do you want to jump in, Charlie?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we can.
It kind of links to what you were saying, like making sure that you answer the question, but I always find it like really awkward if you have to think and like leave it for a second being silent. So do you have any tips for, like, I know you can just leave it silent, but if you kind of want to fill that space while you think, have you got any tips for kind of doing that?
No, I think that that's perfectly acceptable, to be honest. So there are some organisations that will provide certain questions up front, but if they are doing it within the actual interview and you haven't thought about an example previously, then I think it's very okay to just say, okay, like just give me a second. I just want to have a think about the best example of that. But what I would say is, again, depending on the organisation, you should understand roughly what the interview will be based on and what questions might come up. So, for example, as part of our interview process, we provide candidates with a briefing pack, and it will say, these are our values, these are our leadership standards. Your interview will be a mixture of behaviour and competency. So my advice would then be to look at the values and to think of, ahead of the game, an example that links to each of those. So you'll quite often get questions around communication. It might be phrased in a slightly different way, but it will be about communication. team management, how do you prioritization, for example. And what I would be doing is really, before you start your sort of your job search, is really start thinking about what examples have I got for different transferable skills. So when a question comes up, RE communication, I will know that I've got a couple of examples already. And there's nothing wrong with having notes next to you whilst you're interviewing, by the way. There really isn't any, you know, that is not a problem. I hope that helps, Charlie.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll do one quick one from Esther in the chat, and then we'll have a quick 5-minute break, I think. Is there a thing like overselling yourself to the interviewer, and how do you strike a balance between putting your best foot forward or overcooking it, I guess?
I don't. I mean, there is a thin line between selling yourself and arrogance. Don't say you can do stuff if you can't do it, because you'll quickly be found out, if I'm honest. But I think if you are yourself in an interview, if you are giving real examples, then actually you can't oversell yourself, because I think that it's very hard to oversell yourself if you aren't able to deliver what you're saying. So yeah, I would say just be yourself. Try to be concise. So for example, I'm quite a concise person. You know, if I need to say something 10 words, I will say it in 3 words. Okay. But there are people who are totally the opposite to me. And there's a middle ground where actually you can be concise, but you can also be friendly and get your message across about your experience. Try not to waffle. Try not to be arrogant. And I don't think you can oversell yourself in it. Yeah, I think it'd be very hard to, if I'm honest.